I was currently sitting in a muted microphone, which means everything that I said up to this point, you have no idea what I said. So I said, welcome to Collecting Chaos, live, chill. I have something of a headache, but the show must go on. And I also announced, of course, Horizon Picks auction tomorrow is at 5 o'clock Central, 6 o'clock Eastern, instead of 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern. So there's that. That's pretty big. That's freaking huge. But as you can see, I guess I'm not ready. Oh, well. And all these boxes behind me, yeah, those are mostly Barbie dolls that I've been working on. Of course, I have the puzzle, you know. I said I might offer up the puzzle. So that's up there. And let's see. I may offer this. See, May the 4th is coming up fast. We're almost into April. Once we hit April, May the 4th is right around the corner. So I may offer this also. This is the Empire Strike Back collector's case. Unfortunately, it's missing the handle. But it has the inserts. How you doing, John? I finally remembered to turn my mic on. But there you go. That's that may be offered tomorrow. Set that right there. Maybe it'll stay. Maybe it won't. Stay. Don't fall. Okay, you can fall if you want to, but I would rather you not. Last night I did a real short video, like 3 minutes long, and I showed the Star Wars puzzle that I may offer tomorrow night. And I also showed a doll, and I said to put in comments if you want me to clean it or try to clean it. Nobody commented it, of course, so I just went ahead and did it anyway. And I think it turned out pretty nice. As it happens, it's actually a vintage doll, and it's worth a little bit of money, so that's kind of cool. So, yeah. Ought to be a fun time tomorrow night. Going to be a little bit earlier than we normally go. No, that's not. It's going to be a whole lot earlier than we normally go. And we'll see what happens. I will look for some stuff to fill up the wall tomorrow. I've got a video to finish editing tonight so that we can continue. I'm going to continue working. I have continued working on the Challengers of the Unknown comic, and I'll have that tomorrow in my Freeform Friday video, along with a few other things. Yeah, that's. And then, of course, I'll make sure I put it in the chat what's going on, so that yeah, it ought to be fun. Let me see if I can find the link. I know he sent me a link for tomorrow night's auction. We want that to be something that's we can see. There it is. This is a link to tomorrow night's auction. It starts at 5. Not my channel, on Horizon Picks channel. Hey, if you know 2 people that might like my channel, recommend it. Get them to subscribe. I'm 2 away from 500. 500, I might give something away. I don't know. We'll have to see. There's always that possibility. I've got a couple of comics that people have had their eye on that I keep saying, nope, can't sell it. Can't sell that. I worked on it, but I might give it away. So, yeah, you might want to check that out. should be an interesting time in the old Horizon Picks auction tomorrow night. And of course, Saturday night, I will continue on with my $1 sale. I still have a lot of $1 comics that I'd like to have people that want them in their collection or to flip or whatever they want to do with them. I want to see them get a hold of them rather than taking up space in my house, because I need to make more room. I have my eye on a collection of comics, and if I buy it, I'm going to need a lot more room. Of course, that'll screw up that whole getting below 2,000 thing for a while, but yeah, it's a nice collection. So yeah, let's see what happens there. Like I said, I have a bit of a headache, but show must go on. Yeah, that's some of the things that I'm offering. I will have some other stuff as well. I have some comics that I'm thinking about offering. Not going to say what they are yet, but because I still have to find them. That's the hardest part about selling things out of my collection on the Friday night sales, is because I have to find them first. I do have something else I'm tempted to offer up for sale. I kind of want to open it up and try to fix it, but to do that, see, these edges are rolled, and that's going to be a real pain to do that without actually cutting it. And if I cut it, who knows if I can get it to seal up again, short of doing like a TIG weld or something. And I don't much want to do that. Not that I couldn't. Have a great night. Hope you sleep well. Four shy of 400. I thought I was too shy of 500. Did it change? Did I get dropped by a couple of people? Let me take a look here. Yeah, on here, if you look on the chat, it shows 496. I'm showing 498 on my homepage, so I'm confused. But it's shy of 500, not shy of 400. So, Felix, it's so great to see you in the chat. Been wondering where you've been. Make sure you make it, if you can make it on the Saturday night sale. You might want to check that out. It is on a little bit later. It is on at this time, but I'm offering comics at $1 a piece. Might be offering some more Captain America this weekend. I don't know. That's going to be an auction. Everything will start at $1. I like doing that. That's kind of fun. Tomorrow's auction is at 6 o'clock Eastern on Horizon Picks channel. We would love to see you on there. So yeah, Felix and me go way back, a couple of years at least. I think he doesn't have time to go on to auctions and buy anything because he's too busy trying to catch up on all the videos I've released. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. But yeah, I think this would be great to clean up and get to work again, because It doesn't work. And that bothers me that it doesn't work. But of course, it pops up. And it's a googly eyed clown. Of course, he needs to be cleaned up. Uh, yeah, he needs to be cleaned up bad. So, but as a display piece, if somebody wanted to just have it on display, that would be great. So, we'll stuff him back in there. Would hate for anybody to get scared of him. So yeah. I've been doing research and cleaning and stuff like that. Yeah. Hey, 1 plus 12 is, or 1 plus 1 is 11, right? And 1 plus 2 is 12. New math. Yeah, it's something I want to do, but something I know better than to try. If I was more experienced with restoration of stuff like that, I'd go for it. But I'm not. When it comes to restoring metallic things, I'm just not that good at it. So I probably won't. I'll probably offer it just as it is. Maybe maybe give it a bath, clean it up a little bit, get some of the dirt off of it, and then offer it up for sale. Probably on YouTube. YouTube? No, probably on eBay. I don't know. Well, somewhere. I'll have it sitting in the corner, and somebody will make me an offer, and I'll go, okay. Reminds me, I need to check with Kayla and see if her Disney auction is filled up, because I have some Disney stuff that would definitely be good. That I might want to offer up to somebody. Some of it is old. Not exactly vintage old, but vintage, but old. Vintage. The term vintage, when you're talking about antiques and furniture, vintage is 50 years old. That's it. If it ain't 50 years old, it ain't vintage. When you're talking about toys, normally vintage is 50 years old. And that's, of course, it's Star Wars. And then anything from the 80s is considered vintage. What? It's like 30 years, 40 years. Which is kind of interesting. Apparently, on newer things, with the exception of like Barbies, because if a Barbie isn't at least from if the Barbie body isn't from Japan, it's not vintage. You just forget it. No. And that's 1972 was the last year they made the Japanese. The Japanese made the Barbie dolls. Comic books. I hear all the time people referring to 1990s comic books as vintage, and they're not. They're not vintage by a long stretch of the imagination. They're older, yeah, a little bit older. Maybe old school. You could use the term old school to describe them. That would work. A vintage. Now, if somebody wanted to say a Bronze Age was vintage, I could almost see that, because that's about halfway between the first superhero comics and modern comics. So I can kind of see the 70s comics being considered vintage, although technically it has to be older than 1972 to be vintage. Stamps, if it's not at least 50 years old, it's not vintage. Coins, if it's not at least 50 years old, it's not vintage. So pretty much everything has to be at least 50 years old in vintage, except like Magic the Gathering cards. Those are vintage. When anything older than 19 or the year 2000 is considered vintage. What? A lot of the modern collectibles are vintage when they hit 20 years old. I'm sorry, that's wrong. It's a standardized term. It should be used the same across all collectible mediums. Just because something was first released in 2000 and never seen before that doesn't mean the 2001 is vintage. It just means it's old. And it's not that old. I don't understand. Like I said, I can kind of see comics being considered vintage when they hit the Bronze Age. But in reality, it isn't until you start getting into the very early Bronze Age, like the early DC Kirby stuff, that you hit vintage comics. Anything before that isn't vintage. It's games. I see games are a trip. If it's a board game, it has to be 50 years old to be vintage. But if it's a collectible card game, 20 years old is vintage. If it's a role-playing game, 20 years old is considered vintage. Makes no sense. There's no such thing as a vintage role-playing game, because role-playing games didn't start until around 1975, 1976. So how can there be vintage role-playing games when they don't meet the criteria of being vintage? But an original Dungeons and Dragons game is considered vintage. An original Tunnels and Trolls first print is considered vintage, even though it isn't. It came out around 1978, I think. 77 or 78. I don't know. I'd have to get mine out and look to be sure. Mama Wolf, good to see you. Horizon Picks, glad you could pop in. You're always welcome to pop onto this side of the chat. You don't have to be on that side, Horizon. You can come on this side. So, yeah. I think there's a certain mystique about the word vintage that the current modern sellers have decided anything over 20 years is vintage, because that way I can use that vintage term and it'll be more valuable. What? No, it's still the same thing. And I'm guilty of it. I've done it. I'm trying to stop doing it. But you go on eBay and it says, and you're doing like Magic the Gathering cards, and you're doing a single card, and it gives you the choice: vintage, not vintage. It shouldn't give you that choice because the cards haven't been around that long, but it does. So people click that vintage. Vintage is 50 years. You are correct. That's why if it's not made in Japan for Barbie, it's not vintage. And if you call a 1973 Barbie vintage, a collector will slap your hand and smack you upside the head and cuss you out because you're wrong. And most Barbie collectors don't consider anything after 1965 vintage, even though 50 years is the vintage cutoff. So, yeah. That's where it's at. Vintage is 50 years old. There's no such thing as a Star Wars vintage toy, because Star Wars didn't come out till 1978. You can come in, leave your vintage butt behind, Jackson Riker. It's one of those things that drives me crazy. Is that Star Wars case behind me vintage? No. It's old. It's from The Empire Strikes Back. So yeah, it's old. Is that puzzle vintage? No. It's old, but it's not vintage. Is that Barbie doll vintage? Yes, it's from 1969. It's vintage. Yay! My Superman there. That's not vintage. It's from 1978. That's vintage. Not quite antique, but definitely vintage. It's from the 30s. I'm vintage. I'm over 50 years old. Hell, I'm nearly an antique. Like I was saying, I can kind of understand Bronze Age comics being called vintage. I don't necessarily agree with it, uh, but the basic rule is actually for antiques and collectibles. The basic rule, I've been doing research on it, and it's considered 50 years as vintage. I think most people think of vintage as anything that happened before they were born. And if that's the case, well, hell, there ain't nothing past vintage. Yeah, you're still a youngin', Mama Wolf. I know you're still young. But I think that's a lot of it. Current, a lot of the current resellers figure anything older than them is vintage, and that's just not the way it works. Mm, I don't know if this one has bendable joints or not. Yeah, this one actually has bendable joints, but it's a twist and turn, and it was made in Japan, and therefore is considered vintage. It's a 1969 body. It says 1966 on the back, but we all know about that. Yes, vintage sellers for the win. But the powers that be have determined that anything from the 90s is now considered vintage. Of course, the powers that be are full of crap. I'm just going to stick with the 50 years old or older rule and go with that. And anything anything before that, I'll think of some other term. Old school. Old school works. Of course, for me, old school is like stuff from the early 60s. But I could see calling something from the 90s old school. That would make sense to me. Or there's some other terms out there that are appropriate. But I get so baseball cards. I see people calling junk wax from the 90s, from the late 80s, early 90s, vintage. And this is stuff that, and they're doing it so they can try to get more money for it. But I mean, I've got hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of those cards laying around, and they are worth maybe, if you're lucky, a half a penny a piece. But people are calling them vintage so they can get 15, 20 cents or maybe $1 out of it. they're just not worth it. I buy stuff like that once in a while because there's a player I like, or maybe I'm trying to finish off a set and I want to get all of them. But that's the only reason. And I haven't bought any cards except for once for a while. Yeah, Cowboys, Zorro, and Monsters. That's where it's at. Just old school KK. Yeah, anything from the early 60s is old school KK. But I think what it's going to take is for the people that have been doing this for a long time and then understand what the terms mean. We need to teach the new people what the terms mean. We need to teach people that Silver Age doesn't go into the mid 70s. After that, it's Bronze Age. Bronze Age doesn't stop at 1980. It goes to 1984, 1985. That's all Bronze Age stuff. I tend to generally lump Bronze Age up to about 1985. Anything after that, I consider modern. Very cool, Mama Wolf. Hi, Perla's Precious. Glad to see you. Glad you could make it. Uh, yeah, there's a good one to think about. What's modern? Is modern just what's published this year or made this year, or does it go back a few years? Um, for me, when it comes to toys, modern pretty much is anything after 1990. Because most modern toys that are collectible were bought by collectors and put away, and they're still on the card. Of course, a lot of the toys were not put away properly, and they're falling apart on the card or in the box. I have seen GI Joes that people were asking a premium price for because it was mint on the card, and you look in there and the rubber band has snapped, or the O-ring that holds the GI Joe figures together has snapped, and the legs are down, including at the bottom, and the stuff that's up near the top. And I just look at it and go, "That's not mint." Yeah, it's never been out of the package. It's mint. No, it is not mint. Package might be, but the toy isn't. Yeah, Jackson. That's about the way I think about it. Is old school depends on when you were born and how old you are. And for me, old school is a lot different. I sometimes look at comics from the 70s, think, man, this is a modern comic because I remember buying it. So for me, that's modern, even though it isn't. It's Bronze Age. You know, I have to stop and think once in a while. How old is this? But to me, yeah, modern age for comic books is anything after 1984. Hip hop 90s. I tried not to remember that time frame. But I could see people referring it to 90s stuff as old school. You don't call it vintage, but if you call it old school, that's fine. I can accept that. A lot of modern collectors uh, went to school in the 90s. So, yeah, I can definitely accept that as being old school. Yeah, Horizon is kind of young, but yeah, we like him anyway. For the record, I'll be 68 in April. Not saying when in April, but in April I'll be 68. So, so I can get away with calling Mama Wolf a youngin, just barely, but I can do it. Yeah, vintage 1972 and back is vintage in my mind. And I think that's the way it should be for everybody. Everybody should think of it that way. If it was made after 1972, it is not vintage. Technically, I think in antique terms, it's considered modern if it's if it's newer than 50 years. Some sort of modern. So the terms I want to see for toys out of package, uh, like new out of package, that's acceptable. Uh, New in box, that's acceptable. Mint on card, that's acceptable. Or new on card, that's acceptable. Uh, Case fresh is acceptable. If I were to pull out my Chucky and his bride dolls and offer those up, I would offer them up as cased fresh because I have the case, I have the original case, I have the full case. So that's new old stock actually because I owned a store. So, and that's leftover stock from when I had that store. So that would be new old stock. That is an acceptable term. I'm waiting for him to turn vintage, but that's a long way away because I think he came out in 1998. So, yeah, hope I'm still around when they hit vintage. They're only halfway there, so got a ways to go. And I have some other toys that I have case fresh, full cases of, including what could possibly be the ugliest doll ever made. But don't tell Patrick that because he gets mad when I say that. The ugliest action figure ever made. Oh, it's bad. But I have revised my opinion because I've seen the Britney Spears doll. Uh, I have one around here somewhere. I might as well scare the chat with it if I can find it. It's in one of these boxes. Thought I tossed it in this one. Maybe not. No, not in that one. In this one, maybe. Yep, covered her over with heads. It's pretty bad. PTT, good to see you, buddy. Glad you could pop in. I have people sending me tracking numbers. Yep, people sending me tracking numbers. They should just come into my chat. Come online. I'm live. Yeah. I bought some stuff, and I'm doing a trade with a guy. He's going to send me some stuff, and I'm going to offer him credit on it. I'll give him credit for the items, and then I'll give him a separate credit for the shipping. Yeah, there was somebody besides you. Good to see you, Michael. Glad you could pop in. Michael's one of the ones that sent me a tracking number, but yeah, I have somebody else that sent me some information and tracking number. Yes, people. Yes, Michael, you are people now. Michael's the one that's sending me stuff. I'm giving him a credit. I'm giving a 2 credits. I'm giving him 1 credit for shipping and 1 credit for items. So it's a separate thing. You got. Oh, come on! Stop! Stop with the messages. Okay. No, that's okay. You don't have to send a lot more. Tell her to be happy you have what you have, because the guy you're sending that small amount to has over 20,000, and maybe that'll make her feel a little better. I doubt it, but you never know. The things Michael's sending me are things that I'm probably going to work on. Some of it I will work on stream, on videos, and some of it I'm just going to work on my own. So, yeah, that ought to be fun. Hopefully, I won't mess it up like I did that one comic where I put it in my press and I forgot to turn the press off. And now it's stuck. I really got to get a timer for my press because it won't turn off. Yeah. Actually, I just need a new press, but that costs money I don't have. So we're going to have to hold off on that. Maybe if I can get a few people to sign up for Patreon, I can go ahead and buy myself a new press, and I can start pressing comics the way they should be pressed. And won't have to worry about running in there every 3 to 5 minutes to check on it, make sure it hasn't gotten too hot. We'll see what happens with that. I have some ideas on how I can fix it, though, so I might just fix this old one. I did solve one problem. You see, I'm a big fan of pork rinds, chicharrones. I don't want the flavored ones. I just like them plain. Problem is I open a bag and it's gone. I don't know why. I don't know who's eating them, but they need to stop it because I'm getting tired of opening a bag and having it disappear. So I think I've solved that problem. Yeah, that might last me, a week, maybe more, if I'm lucky. See, with that, I don't feel guilty about having an open package because I can undo the top, dump a few out. Yeah. And then once I'm done, I'll wash it out. I'll fill it with McDonald's toys and offer it to the highest bidder. No, probably not. But I could. I have enough to do that with. No, I don't want to do an auction to raise money for anything. I actually have a pretty good deal on Patreon. I mean, you're $3 a month and you get 5% off on shipping, and 5% off on any orders that you do. You spend $8 a month and you get 10% off on shipping, and 10% off on shipping. And if you do $25 a month, you get some other perks, some free stuff, at like 30 days, 90 days, 120 days, something like that. Or no, it's longer than that. It's like 90. It's like 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, something like that. But I give free shipping and 20% off for the $25 tier. So I actually have good deals on my Patreon, but nobody joins, so I'm not worried about it. The link won't be in the description of this one until after I go in and edit the edit the description. But it will be in every other video I do. It's there. So I don't want to make this an advertisement for Patreon, though. But I think that ship is already sailed. In the meantime, find me 2 more people. Get them sign up for my 2. 4 is better, but get them to sign up so that I can hit that 500 mark and move on with my life and maybe give something away. I think I'll offer like 3 different items and people can pick which one they want. All of similar value, of course. Which means to me they aren't worth anything. So, no, that's not true. Yeah, well, Cheez-Its, you can't leave Cheez-Its because if you open a box of Cheez-Its and you don't eat them right away, they go stale. And stale Cheez-Its are not worth having. So you have to eat them all once you open a box. I totally understand that. That's something that has to be done. There are things that you just can't. You open a bag of M&Ms, you have to eat them all. It doesn't matter if it's a 2-ounce bag or a 10-pound bag. They have to be eaten right then. You can't let them sit. There are laws against that sort of thing. Okay, there should be laws against that sort of thing. Reese's peanut butter cups. If you buy them, you must eat them. I'm sure there's a law about that somewhere. You can't just take them home, throw them in the freezer, and forget about them. You have to eat them. And of course, there are Reese's peanut butter cups, and they probably shouldn't make it out to your car once you purchase them. They should probably be eaten before you make it to the car. Soft pretzels, the fresh soft pretzels, salted pretzels, the big ones. Yeah, that's another one. Those are not made to take home with you. They are made to be eaten probably before you get to your car, even though you plan to take them home and put mustard on them. No, they don't make it. I've tried. I had one that almost made it out of the parking lot, but that was it. Matter of fact, next time I go to Walmart, I'm going to stop in at Subway and get one of those soft pretzels. I'll buy two. Maybe that way one of them will actually make it to my house. Probably not. Probably won't make it home. Of course, I could mix up a batch of sourdough bread and just make my own. It's a thought, you know. They're not that hard to make. So, what do we got? I think I'm going to dig through some of the comics that I've offered over the last few weeks and pull a few of those out to offer tomorrow. In addition, I will have mostly new stuff that I haven't offered before. And then, of course, my Saturday show will include what I didn't sell last Saturday, plus additional ones so that we can go a full hour at least. Although sometimes it ends up being closer to 2 hours. Ought to be fun. We're going to have a good time. We're going to have a great auction tomorrow. I just feel it in my bones. We're just going to have a blast. And even if we don't sell a lot of stuff, we're going to have a good time. Which doesn't pay the bills, but it's fun. Have a good time. It doesn't pay the bills, but we enjoy it. Just see, I have 2 stacks of comics back here, right there. There's 2 stacks of comics right there, and those are comics that I have offered over the last 2 to 3 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks actually. So I will go through those and pick out some of those and add to them. Yeah, necessary. Yeah, I can understand that. Wafers, yeah. The Necco wafers or necessary wafers, yeah, they don't. That's why they're called necessary. It's necessary for you to eat them. Yeah. Necco wafers, yeah. Yeah, necessary. Necessary for you to eat them, right? What other foods aren't made to get out of the parking lot? Bit of honey. No. Uh-uh. I bought some bit of honey because I hadn't had any in like 40 or 50 years. So I decided to buy some one day. This was when I still worked at Walmart. And I took them and before I had one, I offered one to a few other people that had never tried it before. And they thought they were great. I ate it. I thought, you know what? Closing this up, taking the rest home, ate them on the way home. They never made it to my house. One right after the other. Oh, they are so good. Not a, not a whole lot of candies I like that much, but that's one of them. The Ghirardelli chocolates are supposed to be really good. I've never actually tried one. I used to buy them for my wife all the time. I reached for one time and got my hand slapped, so I never tried it again. I never tried eating one again because hey, I learned. bought a pretty good sized bag of them, and I thought, well, I'm going to have one of these, and I reached inside the bag and got my hand slapped. So I decided, well, maybe I'm not going to have any. I said, you got all of those? I can't have one? No. Okay. Not selfish with much, but that's something she was very selfish with. Well, I think that's going to be it. My head is pounding. I need to probably need to do something I hate to do. I probably need to take a couple of aspirin and get a little sleep, but I do need to edit a video first. So I will see you all tomorrow morning for the continuation of my Challenges of the Unknown cleaning, and a little surprise on that one. And a couple other things that I threw in there because it is Freeform Friday, so I figured I'd throw in some other junk. And that's what I have to edit and get posted so I can go to sleep. Try to get rid of this headache. If my cat wouldn't wake me up every hour on the hour, I could probably sleep pretty good. And we will see you tomorrow morning watching the video. I won't see you, but you'll see me. And then tomorrow at 6 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Central, I will be on Horizon Pix Auction. So see you then. Hope you had a good time, and have a wonderful night. And don't forget, before you handle your comics, wash your hands.